Welcome everybody. My name is Dr. Jacquie Jacob and I am one of two poultry extension specialists at the University of Kentucky. In my position, I am also the coordinator for the small and backyard flocks community of practice on e-extension. E-extension is the electronic version of the National 4-H, the National Cooperative Extension Service. And it's our group specifically works with small and backyard flocks. As part of the program, we do monthly webinars and I coordinate those. Today's webinar is on external parasites. Brett, oops, share screen. I hope you can see my presentation. Okay. If you can't see it, please let me know by typing in the chat box. I will see if I can, there is one in the chat box. I see it. Okay, good. The speaker for today's presentation was supposed to be Brett Kreifels from Nebraska Extension Service. Unfortunately, his kids got sick and gave it to him. So he's feeling pretty sick right now, so he can't give the presentation. He gave me his PowerPoint and I will try to do my best to go through his presentation for you. As I said at the beginning, this is being recorded and the recording will be available for later viewing. All of our webinars that we've had have been recorded and they are up on our website, and I will share that with you at the end of the presentation. It is difficult for me to see questions while giving the presentation since I only have one screen. But if you type your questions in the chat box or the Q&A box, if I don't see them, we'll try and do all the questions at the end. So this is my attempt at giving Brett's presentation. Okay. So the outline of the presentation he put together was to discuss some of the common external parasites, how to treat poultry for external parasites, and it is always easiest to prevent parasites rather than trying to deal with them. So he highlights three types of external parasites: lice, mites, and fleas. We'll go through each of these separately. One thing that he did not include in his presentation, and which has become a problem throughout the United States now and through Europe as well, is bed bugs. Bed bugs will feed on a variety of different animals and poultry are included. So there have been commercial flocks that have had bed bugs, whether they were brought in from people's homes or whether the farm infestation has taken it to people's homes, I'm not sure. But they have become pesticide resistant, which is also making it a little bit more difficult. Sorry for my cat. So in terms of lice, there was three that he highlights: the chicken body louse, which is one of the most common louse species. They are a chewing lice. They feed on feathers, follicles, and skin. Occasionally they'll get some blood because the gnawing on the skin can cause it to bleed. They are found throughout the body of the bird, but tend to congregate around the vent, which is of course in the rear end, and the hackle regions, which are in the neck, as well as under the wings. They're very irritating to the bird because of the gnawing on the skin, and gives them a constant itching, which makes them very uncomfortable. It can contribute to the loss of feathers, so that if it looks like your chickens are starting to molt, maybe you need to look at feather loss because of external parasites. And of course, the feathers provide the insulative capabilities to the birds. So a loss of feathers can be very dangerous, especially in the winter. The birds will basically look unthrifty because they're going to be very uncomfortable and they're going to be constantly scratching. The shaft louse is characterized by, lounging around on the feather shafts, as the name would apply. They are very similar to the body lice. They feed on feathers, follicles, and skin, and occasionally get some blood that it starts to appear because of their gnawing activity. The wing louse, also known as the pluming louse, is located primarily on the shaft and webs of the feathers. They feed again on the feathers, follicles, and skin, and may feed on blood if the scabs or scales are open. And the wing louse is most commonly seen in pigeons. It's the most common lice species found on pigeons, if you're keeping pigeons or wild pigeons. Mites, as I said, there are 3 species of mite that frequently affect poultry. The most common is the northern fowl mite. It occurs in both the backyard and commercial flocks. The red chicken mite, which does not live on the host, it lives in the poultry house and come out to feed at night. And the scaly leg mite, which is a burrowing mite that burrows under the scales of the legs. It is very microscopic. You don't necessarily know you have it. It's usually the bulging of the legs that tells you you have. So the northern fowl mite and the red chicken mite are bloodsuckers. They're specifically bloodsuckers, and they occur in large numbers. They can cause problems with anemia. And again, you get that unthrifty appearance. And if it's bad enough, you can get death. And scaly leg mites consume skin and leg tissue more than bloodsucking. So this is the northern fowl mite. You can usually find it at the rear end of the bird. Sometimes what you see is the fecal material or the eggs that are there. You may see a drop of 10% or more in egg production with, moderate infestations. Heavy infestations can cause anemia and death because of blood loss. It's one of the most destructive of all the poultry ectoparasites. And as I said, it's one of the most common. In high infestations, it can be zoonotic. That means it can start to infect humans. So, you start to handle your birds and they run up your arm and irritate you. The red chicken mite, as I said, is rarely seen on the bird. It's usually found in the poultry house. It hides in the crevices, in the nest boxes, on the roosts, any little area. It likes to sit there and comes out at night to feed. So if you want to know if you have it, you basically have to go and examine your birds at night with flashlight to try and see it. And again, a blood-sucking mite. So treating the birds does not really help to control the red chicken mite. You have to actually clean out the house, treat all the crevices, and repeat the treatments a few times because the eggs don't get destroyed. So it can be the hardest to deal with because it's harder to find. The scaly leg mite, as I said, is a microscopic type of mite. We see it a lot in backyard flocks. They burrow under the scales on the legs and causes the crusty scales to raise up. and if left untreated, can be very irritating and painful to the bird. I have seen birds become lame as a result of a severe infestation. You can get necrosis of the tissue. Secondary bacterial infections can get in really severe cases, amputations are sometimes needed. So again, it's one where the microscopic, they're hard to see. I see it most often in showbirds, and once they've got the bulgy scales, they can't be shown anymore. But when you take them to the poultry shows, they often pick it up from less reputable breeders, and get infected, and you don't notice, as I said, because they're microscopic. So it's always best to treat any birds that are showbirds when they come back from the poultry show. They should always be treated for external parasites, just as a matter of course, to make sure that you're not bringing anything home. So in addition to having to quarantine your showbirds when they come back to prevent disease, treating for external parasites is also strongly recommended. Fleas, the stick-tight flea is the main one. And Brett says here it's a lesser known ectoparasite, but when I was in Florida working, it was very common there. You could see a lot of them. They're a bloodsucker that sticks to the skin, mostly or in the head region, especially around the eyes, but also the wattles, earlobes, and combs. They can also be transmitted from dogs and cats to poultry and the other way around. So poultry can give it to the dogs and cats. In young poultry, it can cause anemia and death if the flea infestation is high. If the infestation around the eye is really high, you can actually get blindness. So, but you can usually see it around the face. In treatment, he generalizes here, due to ectoparasite life cycles, multiple treatments may be needed. This may be because the eggs are not always affected by the treatment. And so you might kill off the adults and maybe some of the immature stages, but not the eggs. And so the eggs then hatch out and reinfest it. So you have to treat it at least 2 or 3 times to make sure. It's always best to clean the houses as well, to make sure that there aren't any lying around. So the lice and mite treatments that he recommends is Prozac insectrin dusts. I've seen some of those, but I believe that is a 7 dust, and 7 dust is no longer approved for poultry. I'm pretty sure that's what that is. So that's probably no longer available for poultry. Diatomaceous earth can be a hotly debated issue. Some recommend putting it in the dust bathing areas. It should not be the only material in the dust bathing area. And you have to be really careful because it's an irritant. And if you breathe it in yourself or the birds breathe it in, it will cause damage to the lungs. So many people do not recommend diatomaceous earth. Others think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it works by being an abrasive that it breaks up the cuticle of the mite or the lice, causing water loss and eventual death. It is also a desiccant, so it also dries out the birds as well. So that can be a method of functioning as well. So if you use diatomaceous earth, again, it is not the sole material. You have to be very careful handling it. Make sure you use a mask and try not to have dust in the poultry house because that's going to affect the birds. I would recommend sand instead. it is abrasive. It has that abrasive nature, so that it does do that function, and it has less of a problem to your lungs. The approved products are mostly pyrethrum or perithrin products. There are many different products on the market, and they specifically say for use with poultry. Make sure that it doesn't say do not use for laying hens if they're, and Brett has also listed ivermectin products, but specifically says consult a veterinarian. Ivermectin is not an approved product for poultry, especially food animals. So you shouldn't be using it on egg-laying hens or meat birds, because there is transmission to the product, and there are no clearance rates for the products because they're not approved. A veterinarian can give you an off-label prescription to use ivermectin products that are not designed for poultry, and help you figure out the dosages for the birds that you have. But I would not recommend ivermectin for any products, any types of birds that you are selling the products from, because of the liability issues. The only time you would even think about using ivermectin is if your population of parasites has come to be resistant to whatever you're using. So there are bed bugs as well as northern fowl mites that have become resistant to the perithrum and perithrin products. So, you know, if that was the case, then you might want to look at some of the ivermectin just to break the cycle. Another natural product that he doesn't mention that I've seen research for is sulfur dust. So it's the yellow sulfur dust. You put it in a bag and you hang the bag throughout the poultry house. The birds brush up against it and treat themselves. And the sulfur dusts have been shown to be useful for northern fowl mites and for bed bugs. I haven't seen a lot of research on lice and mites with the sulfur, but I do know that it works on the bed bugs and the northern fowl mites. So that's something you might want to consider. The scaly leg mites and the stick-tight fleas, the main thing that you want to do is smother the mites. And for the stick-tight fleas, you basically have to use petroleum jelly. The problem is that the you kill the bugs, the fleas, but it takes a while for them to actually fall off the face of the bird. So it may look like you still have an infestation, which can of course be a problem if you're showing birds. In you know, a light infestation, you can pick them off directly with tweezers after they've died to help speed up the process. It's a little harder with the heavy infestation to get them all off, but covering the birds with the face and infected areas with petroleum jelly works. You can do that with the scaly leg mites as well, but most of the time it's dipping them in oil. A vegetable oil or a linseed oil is most commonly recommended, coconut oil, shea butter, any of those. If you look online, you'll see some say kerosene or gasoline. I do not recommend that. Linseed oil is the recommended oil for treating for scaly leg mites. And of course, you have to treat it multiple times. He says repeat daily until old scales fall off and new ones grow in. I think that would be a lot of dipping because it takes a while for those scales to fall off. But, you know, daily for a couple of weeks is probably good enough. And then once a week, just to make sure that you're softening up those scales for them to fall off. As I said, prevention is better than having to treat the birds because of the chemicals involved, even if there are some natural ones from chrysanthemum flowers. It's better to eliminate them altogether. So keeping wild birds and rodents outside of the coop is important because a lot of the lice and mites are transmitted by wild birds, especially pigeons, European starlings, and house sparrows. But any wild birds can carry it. So don't have bird feeders next to your poultry flocks because you're encouraging them to come. Have wire over any openings in the house. Make sure nobody is making nests in your house. Try to keep those out so that they're not bringing in any of the external parasites, as well as any of the diseases that can be done. Cleaning the coop regularly can help. I'm not sure what he means by cleaning. I don't know that you need to totally take out all the bedding, you know. I'm not sure what he means by regularly. During the winter, you're not going to want to clean it as much because there's nothing really to do with all the litter. Composting the litter will help to kill off some of those bugs. But, you know, keeping it clean, keeping out the birds and the rodents, keeping your feed well contained in metal bins so that you're not attracting mice and rats to it. And then quarantine and treat any new birds before they enter the flock. Typically, if you're going to bring back showbirds, we recommend them being housed in a separate facility if possible, but definitely away from the other birds for at least 3 weeks. Always treat them last. After 3 weeks, if they're not showing any signs of disease, you can take some from the main flock and put them in there and wait another 3 weeks. And if nobody gets sick, then they can all go back to the main flock. If the birds that you put into quarantine originally get sick, then your home flock picked up something and is now giving it to the naive birds. Or if the birds that you put in with the quarantine birds get sick, then the birds that you brought back from the fair or whatever are had a disease that you couldn't see, asymptomatic, and putting them into your whole flock would have caused the whole flock to get sick. If it's brand new birds, we recommend bringing in chicks that haven't been exposed to many diseases. But if you have to buy adult birds or bring in adult birds, maybe you have a particular bloodline that you want for breeding, then the quarantine should be 4 weeks, and then the second 4 weeks before you enter the flock. And of course, there's no guarantee that you're not bringing in disease when you do that, but it at least minimizes the potential. Treat surfaces that the birds frequent with an approved insecticidal treatment. It includes the roost and the nest boxes. When it is time to clean out the poultry house, make sure you get all those crevices in the roost and nest box, as well as in the poultry house itself. If you have an infestation, you have to take out all the shavings and bring in new shavings after you've disinfected the house. So again, prevention is better than having to treat an outbreak. So this was Brett's contact information. He's in Omaha, Nebraska. He works with 4-H as well as small flocks. If you want to contact him for any questions specific to his presentation, I am familiar with the external parasites. There are publications on our website as well that you can go to. I'll give you, I said I would show you the website address. Hold on. So this is our website. If you go there, it has articles, many articles, including external parasite management. I haven't updated the bed bug information yet. I have a publication that I'm currently working on. It's almost ready to go. But we are seeing a bed bug infestation coming back as a problem in poultry flocks, and some of them have drug resistance. So that is always a problem. We also have a Facebook page. If you are interested in keeping up with what we do, come on, there you go. Post information there. I've been keeping people up to date with the avian influenza problem. When the bed bug article is ready, that will go up there. There's a blog, there's the recordings from past webinars. There are things about the upcoming webinars. The next webinar, which is, where are you? In August, and I'm giving that one, is the basics of poultry genetics. It's on August the 2nd, and the following month is breeding purebred poultry. So that they're, again, you can find the recordings from past webinars, and you can see some of the ones coming up. So are there any questions? That went a little faster than normal for our webinars. But as I said, Brett was is sick with whatever bug his kids gave him, and couldn't be here today. He sent his apologies. So are there any questions? Well, not seeing any questions. Oh, no problem. I would have put a little bit more information on there on life cycles, but sometimes that's, you know, too much information. You've got to watch out for that. There are lots of publications online. Your state may have it. E-Extension definitely does have it. And you can, you know, you have to watch out for old publications that say, you know, treat with 7 dust. A lot of our old publications here at University of Kentucky say that. We're trying to get those updated because 7 dust is no longer permitted for use with poultry. I think it has a cancer causing problem for people that use it or something, I'm not sure. So it's no longer recommended. Just as for internal parasites that we discussed last week or the week before, I think, Wazine was a product that was commonly used for treating for internal parasites. That is no longer approved. We have very few medications approved for treating internal parasites of poultry, which is a problem, especially with blackhead in turkeys, which is caused by a protozoan carried by sickle worms. And again, the ivermectin, if you're using it, don't sell any products because you could get, you know, liability issues if somebody gets sick. It is not approved for poultry, but in emergencies, if you have an infestation of disease-resistant parasites, it might be something that in discussion with your veterinarian, you decide to use. So seeing no questions, I will stop the recording. Yeah, my cat's driving me nuts. I've thrown him down 3 times.